April 15th, 1912. The Titanic, the largest and most luxurious ship of its time, struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic and sank, taking over 1,500 souls with it. History remembers it as a tragic accident, a cautionary tale about human arrogance in the face of nature. But what if it wasn't an accident at all? For over a century, whispers have persisted that the Titanic didn't just fall victim to an iceberg, but that it was sabotaged, swapped, or deliberately sunk. A scheme involving billionaires, shadowy financial interests, and a plot that changed the course of global history. Tonight, we dive deep into one of the most chilling and controversial theories of all time. The conspiracy that the Titanic was sunk on purpose. The early 20th century was the golden age of steamships. Nations competed to dominate the seas, and wealthy passengers demanded speed, luxury, and safety. Enter the White Star Line, owned by J.P. Morgan's International Mercantile Marine Company. In 1908, White Star commissioned 3 massive sister ships, the Olympic, Titanic, and Britannic. These were marvels of engineering, unsinkable, indestructible, or so people believed. By 1911, the RMS Olympic launched first, and then Titanic followed a year later. But almost immediately, the Olympic ran into trouble. It collided with the HMS Hawke, a Royal Navy cruiser, suffering severe damage. Repairs were costly, and questions about the ship's future profitability began to arise. Here is where conspiracy theorists say a dark plot was born. The ship swap theory is perhaps the most popular Titanic conspiracy. According to this idea, White Star Line, facing financial disaster, secretly swapped the damaged Olympic with a brand new Titanic. The Olympic, already compromised and facing insurance complications, was disguised as the Titanic. The real Titanic, meanwhile, took on the name Olympic and continued in service. The plan: send the Titanic, actually the Olympic, on a doomed voyage, stage an accident, and collect a massive insurance payout. Supporters of this theory point to curious anomalies. Survivors described slight design differences between the Titanic they boarded and what official blueprints later showed. Porthole patterns didn't match photographs. Some crewmen supposedly hinted at knowing the ship wasn't really the Titanic. If true, this was not merely a disaster. It was an insurance scam of epic proportions. But money from insurance may not have been the only motive. Another, far darker theory takes us straight into the heart of global finance. In 1912, the U.S. was embroiled in debates over the creation of a central bank, the Federal Reserve. Many powerful men opposed it, believing it would hand control of the economy to a small, elite group of bankers. Here's where the Titanic comes in. On board the ship that fateful night were some of the wealthiest and most influential opponents of the Federal Reserve. Benjamin Guggenheim, heir to a mining fortune. Isidor Straus, co-owner of Macy's department store. John Jacob Astor IV, one of the richest men in the world at the time. All 3 perished in the sinking. Meanwhile, J.P. Morgan, the financial titan backing the White Star Line and a supporter of the Federal Reserve, had originally booked a luxury suite aboard Titanic. But at the last minute, he canceled his trip, citing ill health. Days later, he was spotted in France, reportedly enjoying fine health indeed. Conspiracy theorists argue this is no coincidence. The sinking of the Titanic conveniently removed key obstacles to the establishment of the Federal Reserve, which became law the very next year, in 1913. In this version, the Titanic was not sunk for insurance. It was sunk as a political assassination at sea. Theories thrive on anomalies, and the Titanic story has many. Morgan's absence. As mentioned, J.P. Morgan's sudden cancellation raised eyebrows. Why would he skip the maiden voyage of his own company's crowning achievement? Valuables removed. Reports claim that several priceless artifacts Morgan intended to ship aboard Titanic were removed just before departure, almost as if he knew what was coming. The lifeboats. The Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, far fewer than needed. Regulations allowed it, but many argue this was intentional. Fewer survivors meant fewer inconvenient witnesses. The wreckage confusion. Some photos and eyewitness accounts suggest that the ship that sank had structural differences from the Titanic. Was it actually the damaged Olympic sent to its watery grave? Emergency drills cancelled. On the very morning of the disaster, Titanic's scheduled lifeboat drill was cancelled. Survivors later said this contributed to chaos when the evacuation began. Insurance fraud on this scale seems unthinkable, but it's central to the ship swap conspiracy. The Olympic, damaged and losing money, was supposedly beyond profitable repair. By swapping it with the Titanic and sinking it, White Star Line could file an enormous insurance claim, wiping away its losses. Critics argue the insurance payout wouldn't have been enough to justify such mass murder. But supporters say that with Morgan's vast financial empire involved, the stakes were far larger than just one ship. Of course, historians and experts dismiss these theories. They argue insurance policies on Titanic would not have covered deliberate sinking. Records show the Titanic and Olympic had many subtle differences, easily identifiable. Survivors' memories of design differences could be chalked up to trauma and confusion. No credible evidence ties the Federal Reserve's creation to the sinking. Yet the conspiracies refuse to die. Why? Because the official story still leaves haunting questions unanswered. Why do people believe the Titanic conspiracy? Partly because the Titanic disaster itself feels almost unbelievable. How could the most advanced ship of its time, called unsinkable, sink so quickly on its maiden voyage? It also fits a pattern: powerful elites supposedly sacrificing lives for wealth and control. Whether true or not, the story resonates because it makes sense of tragedy through a lens of hidden manipulation. The Titanic conspiracies have seeped into pop culture. Books, documentaries, and countless YouTube videos fuel speculation. Online forums dissect photographs of rivets, lifeboats, and blueprints. And every time Titanic resurfaces in public memory, whether through James Cameron's blockbuster film or expeditions to the wreck, the conspiracies flare back to life. In some circles, the Titanic is even described as the first 9/11, a massive, orchestrated event to achieve hidden goals, disguised as disaster. Beyond the ship swap and banking plot, other fringe theories exist. Some claim the Titanic was deliberately steered into the iceberg by insiders. Others suggest a fire in the coal bunkers, known before sailing, weakened the hull and was covered up. A few even hint at supernatural involvement, curses, omens, and prophecies ignored. While less grounded, these add to the aura of mystery. Over 110 years later, the Titanic still rests on the ocean floor, but the questions won't die. Did Morgan and his allies sacrifice over 1,500 lives for money and power? Did White Star Line swap ships to escape financial ruin? Or was it simply, tragically, an accident of hubris and fate? The truth may never be fully known, but one thing is certain. The Titanic wasn't just a ship, it became a symbol. To some, it represents arrogance defeated by nature. To others, it stands as a reminder that the powerful may play games with human lives for their own gain. The Titanic sank in icy waters over a century ago, but the conspiracies surrounding it remain alive, fueled by unanswered questions, eerie coincidences, and humanity's deep suspicion of power. Was it an accident, or was it the perfect crime committed on the grandest stage imaginable? You decide.